So hello, and thank you for joining ProAV in partnership with Utelogy for this solution demo. It's an honor to have you join us. To provide a bit of background, this has been a solution that we have been investigating for the past 3 years, and I'm pleased to let you know we've selected Utelogy as the solution partner for us to add the ability to provide our clients, you, with remote support capabilities. With this solution, we, as ProAV, expect we'll now be able to provide clients with a solution that will assist with many common concerns we have found in this market, such as system issues related to outdated firmware, system outages, and settings changes. We expect this will greatly reduce the amount of times we are required on site for service calls. One analogy I recently heard that describes it perfectly is, we're like firemen. We react when there's a call and rush out to put out the fire. Do we not have smoke detectors in our homes and businesses? Do firemen not make sure they are properly installed and functioning? Why would we not treat our AV estate the same way? Utelogy monitoring services is the AV smoke detector. Automate is like the fireman checking the equipment functionality. Utelogy can help prevent AV disasters and client frustrations. To sum up, our goals are to assist all clients with reduced mean time to detect, MTTD, and mean time to restore, MTTR metrics. The Utelogy solution that we are presenting is available only through ProAV for the Saskatchewan market. This webinar is generously hosted by Techni-Contact, who will be managing the chat and answering questions for us. Thank you again for joining us, and I'd now like to introduce you to the Utelogy presenter, Jeff Philbrandt, who will go over what the Utelogy solution is. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for the introduction. And I know the format of today's meeting is such that as I'm presenting this content, you guys will have the ability to use the chat functionality to answer or ask any questions you might have. What we'll probably do is I'll break this up into a few different sections. So I'll go through and first want to give everybody kind of a lay of the land, the Utelogy standard topology. What does a Utelogy deployment look like? What are the various components? How would it typically be laid out? We'll go through that, how Utelogy operates at a high level, and then we're going to take you directly into a live demonstration of the product. So you'll see everything running here live and in action. Everything that I'm going to be demonstrating for you here today is GA or general availability. So there's no smoke and mirrors. There's no imagine if you will or coming soon here. But certainly feel free to post those comments through. I'll come up for air occasionally and take a couple of breaks and pauses, and then we can review those as necessary, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you guys might have. So Ben or Mark, or I guess anybody from Techni-Contact, was there any other housekeeping items that you guys wanted to attend to before I delve into this? Or are you guys ready for me to just jump right into the demonstration?
No, I think we're ready to go there, Jeff. The session's
great.
Recording, so the floor is yours.
Excellent. Let me go ahead and share my screen here, and let me know when this is coming through for you guys.
Yep, you're all good.
Excellent.
Wonderful.
All good. Well, with any Utelogy deployment, there's really two key elements you're going to have here. You're going to have the U server you see pictured at the center of this image, and you're going to have uManage, which is up here at the top of the image, directly above it. The easiest way to conceptualize or think about U server is this is the brains of the operation. This is the control processor. This is the data aggregator. And it's the part of our solutions responsible for communicating with the actual devices that you're going to be managing, monitoring, and controlling. So as I'm sure you are all aware of by now, Utelogy is an exclusively software-based solution for management, monitoring, and control of your AV estate. And as such, Utelogy does not produce, manufacture, or sell any hardware of any kind. So when you purchase Utelogy, you're effectively purchasing a software license, which entitles you to the software, which you can download and install on the machines of your choosing, apply your license keys to those, and deploy it and have it operate as you would like or see fit. With Utelogy, you can have as few or as many uServer instances as you would like or need in your environment. We have some customers who are managing 1 rooms, 10 rooms, 100 rooms, all from a single uServer instance. But we have other global customers who have U servers deployed effectively per region. So if you're a large global entity and you've got locations scattered all across the globe, maybe you want to deploy a couple servers in North America, a couple servers in EMEA, a couple servers in Asia Pac, Australia, New Zealand, whatever's going to best meet your needs. Utelogy does not license the product based on the number of servers that you have in your environment. We license the product based on the number of rooms that are under management. So again, have as few or as many servers as you see fit. But the net of this is that you don't need to deploy any longer physical proprietary hardware control processors into every single individual room. And you could operate or manage, monitor, control a large portion of those from a single server instance in many scenarios. You'll notice here that the language we use says on network, on-prem. The reason we've gone away from using the term on-prem exclusively, and we use the term on network is, though I would say a large percentage of our deployments, it is going to be a owner-furnished virtualized server the customer is going to spin up for us. We have had scenarios where customers have approached us and said, want to deploy this in Microsoft Azure, in AWS, in some type of cloud environment like that. Just as Utelogy doesn't particularly care how many userver instances you have, we also don't get hung up on where those userver instances are deployed. So long as that userver has the ability to communicate with the devices that we're managing, monitoring, and controlling, whether that's facilitated through a VPN or some other format, that's all that matters to us. So you can have as few or as many servers, and they can be placed wherever you'd like them, so long as they can communicate with the devices we're managing, monitoring, and controlling. And as we move over to this side of the illustration here, what you'll notice is that you'll see both hardware and software. So obviously, Utelogy does give you the ability to manage, monitor, control traditional AV assets, AV devices, things like matrix switchers, audio DSPs, displays, projectors, what have you. And that's certainly been a big focus for us. But what's even more important is we recognized many years ago that a lot of our customers were moving away from exclusively hardware-based solutions, and we're moving into environments where they're utilizing more software-based applications. So just like we're doing this call on Zoom here today, we have a lot of customers utilizing things like Zoom and Teams and WebEx, Google Meet, you name your soft conferencing codec platform of the day. And not only do we need the ability to manage those applications, but also the asset that those applications are running on. So we developed a piece of software years ago called Ucomputer. And Ucomputer is a very lightweight agent that's in a scenario where you have maybe a huddle room where, again, you're running like Zoom or Teams. And you want to be able to monitor and manage that PC. Maybe you've got a small form factor Windows 10 PC or like a Nook PC in that room running that application of your choosing. By installing our lightweight agent Ucomputer onto that machine, we can now monitor the status of that PC and execute functionality changes within that environment, launch the application, do any number of different activities, and treat that PC as we would treat any traditional AV asset. So just like we would monitor the status of your matrix switcher or your projector, we can now tell you the status of that PC. So, first and foremost, is it online? Are we talking to it? Is it connected? What operating system is it running? How much disk utilization, memory utilization, all of those different factors. And then again, do things like I mentioned, like launch applications on it, launch a browser, navigate to a predefined URL, manipulate volume, conditions or mute conditions within Windows. So there's a whole host of various activities that allows us to do. And going beyond that, what's also very neat about this part of our application is now, because we have the ability to communicate with that PC, we can also monitor the status of any connected USB peripherals. So in an environment, maybe we have like a Logitech Rally or Meetup system connected, and you want to know the status of the USB peripherals. Did somebody disconnect a mic pod or the camera or some USB peripheral? We can now monitor, non-traditional AV assets as well. And so it just really creates a high level of expansion in the number of devices that we can touch and the amount of visibility that we can give our customers, again, across the entirety of their AV estate, not just limited to a specific subset of devices, which we've seen from other vendors. The way that we communicate with all of these devices here is through the use of what we call drivers. There's some manufacturers that call them modules. Some people also call them drivers. But for every device that we integrate with, we build a driver against the manufacturer's published API. So virtually every device out there today has a published or open API, which says, exactly what control commands we can send it, what queries we can send to it to get status information, all those different things. Utelogy has an extremely comprehensive driver library already in existence today. We've got over 500 unique or discrete drivers or DLLs with support for over 3,000 devices, because within each driver DLL instance, you can have multiple, when Samsung releases a new display series, there's multiple models supported within that. So we can cover multiple models within a particular driver. So again, over 3,000 devices supported today. It's constantly growing. And again, we can create a driver for any device that's got a published or open API. So sky's really the limit. As you come up into this area of our platform, if you are using Utelogy for control, beyond just the management monitoring capabilities, one of the very amazing elements of our solution is that all of our control is served up as HTML5 content. Again, as you remember me stating earlier, we don't produce, manufacture, sell any hardware, but you can use any device as a quote unquote touch panel in Utelogy that has an HTML5 compliant browser within it. So anything that's running Google Chrome, Firefox, Safari, Android WebView, you name your HTML5 browser, we can use that as a touch panel within our environment. So frequently, many customers are using devices like Mimo monitors, makes a very nice, effectively, it's an Android tablet with integrated hardware and PoE. We've had customers that have utilized iPads, customers using Microsoft Surface devices. Again, it's entirely up to you what you want your environment to look like and what devices you choose. We really focus on agnosticity and allowing our customers to implement the devices that are most important to them. Again, all served up because it's HTML5 content. It's also highly customizable. So we do have standard or stock themes that come as a part of the product, but if this ever needs to be customized, we do this all in standard languages using HTML5 and CSS. And so again, you can manipulate the user interface to really look any way, shape, or form that you'd like it to. As I come back over to the center of this diagram here, now as the use server is communicating with all of these devices, collecting status information. So, is your projector on? Is your VTC system in a call? What's the serial number of a particular device? Its fan speed, its MAC address, its firmware version, all these different metrics and data points that we're gathering from those devices, that information is being fed up to the uManage portal. All of the communication from userver to uManage is initiated outbound from userver to uManage over HTTPS port 443. So everything is secure. We're never going to ask customers to punch holes in their firewall or open communication inbound to the userver from uManage. Again, all that communication is going to be initiated outbound. It's no different than if you were in your corporate network, opening a browser on your laptop and navigating to a website. It's the same path and it's the same flow. All of the data that's transmitted between userver and uManage is going to be encrypted both in flight and at rest, so in transit and at rest. And uManage is the central area of our platform where you do all of your asset management, your dashboarding, reporting, user and group provisioning, alerts and notifications are generated. All of those different elements are managed within uManage. uManage is a cloud-hosted solution that is hosted by Utelogy for our customers in Microsoft Azure in the vast majority of instances. The reason I say the vast majority of instances, probably as high as 96, 97%, is we have had certain scenarios where customers have approached us that didn't have the ability to use a true cloud-hosted solution and could only deploy a product in a private cloud type scenario. And we can facilitate that with our product as well. So uManage can be deployed in a private cloud instance in scenarios where it's needed. There's a little bit of a different pricing model with that I'm sure our sales team would be happy to discuss with you, but just know that we can meet the needs of different deployment types and security postures. So this is where I'm going to be focusing the vast majority of my demonstration today. But before I move in there, the other thing that I did want to mention to you guys is Automate over here. We had a number of customers that approached us that all had a very similar problem. Some of our large global customers that are managing thousands of rooms had a very interesting challenge they were facing. Many of them employed what we like to call the clipboard brigade. So they had a group of guys and gals that would go out every night and do manual testing of their rooms in their estate. So they'd go into rooms physically, turn the room on, dial a video call, check audio levels in the rooms, make sure the display came on the right input, do any number of various activities, and then document their findings as a part of that process. We found that everybody had different procedures and mechanisms in place to do that. Some people were very manually documenting their findings. Sometimes it was notes on a notepad. Other times it was notes inside a Google sheet somewhere. But what we found consistently was that often there was a level of granularity that was lacking in these findings. So they might be aware that there was a problem with audio in a particular room, but they maybe didn't know where that problem was occurring, what device it was occurring on, what the specifics of that problem were. And so even though they would have somebody say that a particular test had failed in a particular room, they were still walking in blind in a lot of instances to what some of those issues might be at a very deep level. So what Uautomate does is solves a number of challenges for a customer, but principally what we can do with Uautomate is automated room readiness testing. So you can define what we call a script. The script says what the test condition is going to be for that room or group of rooms. So again, using the example I laid out, maybe want to turn the room on, dial a video call, check audio levels, do any number of various activities, turn the room back off. And then at the end of that, we're going to generate a test log or an output of that report. It'll tell us at a very granular level, what occurred as a part of that test. So are all those devices healthy? Did everything come on in the correct state? When our call connected, did a call connect at the appropriate rates that we had deemed and set up as that test? So I'll be demonstrating that for you here today. And you'll see that live. So with that, I'm going to move into the demonstration, but I did want to take a moment to, again, quote unquote, come up for air, see if there are any questions that had come up over the course of the last number of minutes here. Answer anything you might have before we move on. So for the Techni-Contact team, was there anything? Take a look.
Nothing so far, Jeff.
Okay. Excellent. Mark, was there anything that you wanted to add before I moved into the Umanage demonstration here? I think we're good to go.
I think we're good to go if there are no questions.
All right, excellent. Let me go ahead and bring this over here. So here we are. I am logged into the Umanage platform. You can navigate to Umanage anywhere on the globe, just with simply entering portal.utelogy.com into your browser. When you get to the login page, you're going to simply pop in your credentials, your username and password. You're going to authenticate and log in. Umanage is a fully multi-tenant environment. So we have the ability to structure this so that as a managed service provider, they can have all of their clients appropriately nested under their account to deliver these respective managed services to you, the end user. And you, as the end user, knowing that this is a full multi-tenant environment, can have the power to know that all of your data is stored uniquely and independently from every other customer account that we have within our environment. So your data is unique to your account, your users, everything that's a part of that there. When you first log into the Umanage dashboard or the Umanage environment, the first page you're going to come to is the dashboard page. And the beauty of this, because of the way that we work with the multi-tenancy and with our user and group provisioning, is many of the things you're going to see throughout this platform are user specific. So dashboards, I'm going to be demonstrating for you here, reports, and a number of other areas can be tailored to a specific user, not something that needs to be performed at a global level across the entire organization. So in the instance of dashboards, these dashboards are tied to my user account. So I can have a completely unique set of dashboards and discrete set of dashboards from anybody else within my environment. So when I create these dashboards are comprised of tiles, and then the different tiles we have different properties to allow you to customize this and configure this however you might want to use it. So as I take a look at some of these existing dashboards that I already have created here, so you can see that I've got a dashboard to reflect room and asset information. I've got another dashboard that reflects alert information. And then finally, I've got kind of a general dashboard with a heat map and our web page dashboard tile that I'll talk to you guys about. As I go into this, and specifically if I go into edit one of my existing dashboards, again, you can see that I've got these tiles, and then each one of these tiles has different properties. So over the top, I've got the room count tile here, but you can see that I've configured that differently in each instance to show me different information. So in one instance, I'm looking at total rooms. Another instance, I'm looking at rooms in use. And in a third instance, I'm looking at rooms offline. The same is true as if I move into like my asset graph or my pie graph down here. So with my asset graph, currently I'm looking at count by manufacturer. I could be looking at count by device kind, location. There's any number of different parameters I could configure to, again, have these tiles illustrate information that's relevant to me. And then once I've done that, because tiles or dashboards are managed at the user level, but we recognize people may want to utilize these globally within their environment, you do have the ability to share dashboards with the current account. So by simply checking this checkbox here, I could share this globally across the entire account. So anybody else who's got access to that environment would see that presented as a read-only dashboard. So those other users wouldn't have the ability to manage or manipulate it. That would be local to the user who created the dashboard. But again, you could share that information and make it very easy to distribute that content to other users in your environment. As I save this and go back in here, so you can see we've got a number of different tiles that illustrate asset and room information. We also have a number of different tiles in our dashboard library, tile library that illustrate alert information. And again, we can represent this information differently. So alerts by time, alerts by type. We can illustrate them as different graphs and formats. You can export this data. So there's all kinds of different things that can be done with this. And then lastly, this may seem a little benign at first glance, but on this final dashboard that I've got created here, I've got a world map. I can configure this heat map to show me, again, rooms that are, have air conditions, rooms that are online, any different metrics that are relevant to me. But down at the bottom of the page here, I have a web page dashboard tile. This is a fully functional web page, and it's pointed just directly to the Utelogy website right now. But effectively, if I have other applications that I'm working with, I can embed those other applications that might have HTML content directly into our web page dashboard tile here. So you have a single pane of glass that you can work from. By simply logging into your Utelogy account, you can embed those within here. And again, this is fully functional. So anything I could do directly on the website, I can do within the dashboard tile here. So just a higher level of flexibility to allow your workflows to operate much more easily. Do you think there was maybe something in the chat? I'm going to check this here really quickly and see. There's a question.
Yeah, we've got one question here, Jeff, from Tim.
Yep.
It's, can a device variable trigger a script? Example, a device detects presence in a room, turn on the display, set the video input to HDMI, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's an area of a platform that we weren't going to spend a tremendous amount of time in today, just because the time allotment that we have for the meeting. We can do exactly what you're talking about. That would actually occur at a different area of our platform. So back over on the PDF diagram that I was showing you earlier here, where we have the uServer instance, there's actually a piece of software that gets deployed on that same machine typically called uConsole. And it's within uConsole where we do all of the configuration for the room. So that's where we go in and we define what devices are in what rooms. It's where we can clone a room and bring all those rooms and devices online. And it's within uConsole that we have a concept of what we call triggers. Triggers are your if-then-else type logic that would do exactly what you're talking about. So yes, in the scenario where somebody walks into a room and we've got a device that detects occupancy, you can say, hey, in the instance that the room is occupied, then I want to do all those things. I want to turn the display on. I want to make sure it's on the right input, and that's all done through those triggers that we talk about. So there's a question that came in about if I can speak quickly to uComputer and monitoring USB devices. So yeah, I can certainly speak to that. As I mentioned, the way that Utelogy integrates with devices is we write a driver against any device's published API. One of the USB peripherals that you heard me reference earlier was the Logitech devices, such as the Logitech Rally, Meetup, even the Tap. There's other devices out there, such as the Jabber Panicast device or the Hudley camera that have also published APIs. In those instances, most of the USB solutions will have you deploy a piece of software on the same machine that those USB peripherals are connected to. And we're actually talking to that piece of software that's serving up the API that allows us the ability to understand the state of those devices. Now, if we're talking about a USB peripheral device that doesn't have a published API or any way for us to communicate with it, we can still produce a pretty basic driver for that device. Every USB device has what's called a PID and a VID, or a product ID and a vendor ID. And when you plug a USB device into your Windows machine, it registers that PID and that VID. So we know this device is connected, this is the make, this is the model. And so we can actually build a USB driver for even any generic USB peripheral that doesn't have an API against its PIN and its VID. So at a minimum, we know the make and model, so it gets treated like an asset within Umanage. And if somebody goes in and connects or disconnects that device from the PC, we know the status of it, so we can throw an error condition to say somebody disconnected the camera or disconnected the mic and speaker combo, anything of that nature. Did that adequately answer the question? There was another question. As an MSP, can I view all of my tenants in one dashboard? And is it possible to restrict visibility based on role rights down to the tenant level for embedded support staff? So absolutely, yes. Within this, I am currently logged into an operational level account. So our accounts at a high level are broken up into MSP or managed service provider accounts and OPR or operational accounts. An end customer account would be your OPR account. And then your MSP account would obviously be your managed service provider. So yes, all of those OPR operational accounts get nested under your MSP account. And when you log in, there's this button up here called the account selector where it says Utelogy Lab. You would click on that, and then, yeah, all of your accounts are nested under that. So you could click on any one of them and drill into them further, or you could create dashboards at the MSP level to illustrate information globally across all of your customer accounts. And then in that same vein, you can create groups within our platform, which I'll be moving into shortly here, where you can provision different users within your environment into different groups, and you can restrict those groups to only have rights to particular OPR accounts within your environment. So you can absolutely 100% do everything that was asked or requested. And I'll go ahead and continue through reports here. I'll check back to the chat in a little while after I get through some other sections, and we can answer any additional questions you guys might have. As I move over to this part of the platform here, we are going to move into reports. I've got a couple of reports I've already created here today, but effectively, if any of you guys have ever worked with platforms like Google Analytics before, any of those standard tools and tool sets, you'll notice that some of the workflows here that you're going to experience are similar. We wanted to create workflows that our IT teams and MSP teams were familiar with and that they've used on a regular basis before. So as you build these reports out, when I do so, I effectively just add columns to my report. And those columns represent different data points or metrics that we're looking to report on. So here I've got a report for firmware that I built that has manufacturer, device, model, firmware version, and room name, but I could add any number of columns and select any number of different metrics, or even putting custom metrics in here. If I've built devices or drivers that have custom metrics, I could plug those in. And then once I've decided what items I'd like to visualize within my report, I can shuffle those around, place them wherever I'd like to, and set that up as I see fit. And once I've created the template for my report that says what data points or metrics are going to be displayed within it, I can apply filters over the top. So here I've created a firmware report, and maybe on Monday I want to take a look comprehensively across my environment, but on Tuesday, maybe I just want to take a look and see what the firmware version of all my Cisco devices is. So I'll go ahead, apply a filter, manufacturer equals Cisco, and sure enough, here we go. So this is the full firmware report, and that's filter's been applied. I can apply multiple filters if I wanted to. So here in this instance, I've just got a single filter, but I could apply as many as are relevant to my particular application. We can build reports across asset level information, alert level information, room-based information. So again, the sky's kind of the limit in the way that you can work with the data and manipulate it to your scenario. And then once the report is created, You can save that, but then you can obviously also export it. So you can export it as in different formats, CSV, JSON, Excel, PDF, etc. As I move into the room section of the platform, this is where you're going to start to see room level data articulated. So in this particular instance here, I'm going to select one of the rooms. You'll notice, just like you'd have in like an Active Directory environment, there's a location tree that exists over on the left-hand side here. And then I can group or structure my rooms into various locations. Again, in the scenario where you have a global deployment with lots and lots of rooms deployed across the globe, you're going to want to break those up into probably country, and then, region, and then country, and then, city, whatever it might be, even potentially building or floor. We have some customers that go to that level of granularity. And then I can just drill down into my location tree and start to see the information represented for that specific location. At a high level on this page, I'm going to see the status of the room. So is the room on or off? Are there any alerts present in that room? If the room has devices or the ability to be make ATC or VTC calls, I'll see that represented. If there are devices in the room that allow me to detect occupancy, either true, false, or number of occupants, I'll see that data articulated here as well. And then I can drill into that room and I can see a deeper subset of data here. So now this is going to show me the assets that are associated with this particular environment. So here I've got a BIAMP Tessera DSP, I've got a Cisco SX20, a Middle Atlantic Racklinks PDU, an NEC V-Series display, and I have a PC running our uComputer instance. Now I can see here that I actually do have a couple of different alerts. I appear to have two devices that are offline. I can tell a number of different reasons. One, because I can see that this air connection or air condition over here tells me that there's no network. So I'll need to investigate that to see what's going on there. And then down here, I can see that I'm talking to this uComputer device, but I still appear to have alert. So I'll need to take a look at that a little bit further. I'm going to show you exactly how we would do that. I can look at alerts specific to the room. I can look at alerts globally across my environment on this other page over here, where I have the bell icon, or I can go into a specific asset and look at alerts that only pertain to that device or asset there. But as I move back over to the room, go to the boardroom, I will see room level metrics now. So this is going to tell me things like, is the room on or off? Does the room have certain capabilities we talked about earlier, like ATC or VTC capabilities? Is it in a call? I can put user-defined notes in here. I can specify the room kind. So there's a number of fields that are predefined or that are driven by the data that we're getting from the devices or the rooms. And there's other fields in here that, again, are user-definable or can be populated as you see fit. There's also a full event log, so we'll tell you things like, if the room's ever been put into a maintenance condition, if changes ever occurred to the room configuration, all of that information is articulated within the event log here. There's also a document repository. Commonly at the room level, we'd use this to upload things like bill of materials, line drawings. It's entirely up to you. We don't limit the file types that you can upload into here, so whatever your needs might be. And then lastly is this model file section here. So when Utelogy builds a configuration for a room that says what devices are contained, how we're going to communicate with those devices, if you're using us for a control platform, what the user interface is going to look like, all of that information is stored in what we call a model file. When you build your configuration and save it locally on the server, it does keep a local copy of it on that userver instance. But the other thing that we do is we archive those model files back to the uManage portal. We've seen many instances with legacy control systems where the code or the configuration for those rooms is being built on somebody's local machine, and then it's maybe they're storing a copy. I've seen some customers who have better methods in place for storing that and more process around it, but it's not out of the norm where we've seen scenarios where John built a configuration file for a control system and he went on vacation and forgot to upload it to their Google Drive or whatever they're using to store that information. So this repository is maintained without any intervention on anyone's behalf. The second you hit file save, not only again do we save a local copy to the server, but that file is archived back within the uManage environment as well. So in a scenario where somebody did make an adverse change to a configuration, maybe the room were working fine on Monday, somebody came in, they wanted to do something simple like change the label of a button, and in the process of doing so, maybe they made some undesirable or adverse change. you could simply come back in, you could download the last known good working copy of the model file, apply it back to the system, and you're back exactly to the same operating state that you were before any changes occurred. So customers own their data. The end customer is always exclusively in possession of those configurations or model files, just as they would be with any other IT-based platform. I know there was another question that came in regarding reports here. Beyond exporting reports, do you have an API available to allow external visual data tool to view live data? And can model files be applied to a like room type? So yes, there are various ways to access data that we have within UManage or UServer. And actually, I'll move into that area of the platform here in a moment. But for both UManage and for UServer, we do have a set of published open APIs. As I mentioned earlier, we focus on agnosticity. We've gone the exact opposite direction of the rest of the market in producing proprietary hardware with no published APIs. We are doing, again, the exact opposite. So, agnosticity, software, openness, published APIs, those are all of the things that we're about. So we do have a published API for UManage, but beyond that, in your specific scenario, we're talking about maybe integrating with a third-party platform like Power BI or Tableau or some other type of data and visualization tool like that. We actually have another method to offload data because making API calls into UManage to get data for something like a Power BI or a Tableau is a bit cumbersome. There's better ways to manage that. So we actually have a suite of what we call data connectors. And the data connectors actually just offload the raw data directly from our database into the platform of your choosing. And it's entirely up to you then how you want to manipulate that data, how you want to visualize it, what you want to do with it. So absolutely a means to do that. And we can facilitate exactly what you're looking to do there. You had also asked about model files being applied to like room types. And again, that's in the other area of the platform where I don't know that we'll have all the time to get to today. But when you build those configuration files for those rooms, effectively in most environments, we see this where you're going to standardize your room types. So even if you're deploying 100 rooms, you probably have 50 of those rooms all adhere to one room type. So it's always going to be the same devices, configured the same ways. And in most instances, probably the only thing that's going to change is going to be the IP address of those devices from your room to room. So yes, we absolutely have a concept which we call cloning. So when you create the first instance of a room, you can simply right-click on that room. You can choose to clone CLEM. CLEM is a term we use in our platform. It stands for Control Logic Module, but for all intents and purposes, a room is a CLEM. But you can clone that room, and it makes an exact duplicate instance of it, where all you would need to do is probably go in again and change your IP addresses of those devices, hit File Save, and now in under 30 seconds, or maybe a minute, depending upon how many devices you had in that room, you can create an exact duplicate. You're up and running with the appropriate information for that room. So yeah, we can clone rooms. You can export the model file and import that data into another one. There's all kinds of different ways that you can manipulate that information. And we work very, very well at scale. So there was another question that came in regarding, can we get a quick overview of the control configuration from the GUI interface? I don't know that we'll have time to get to that today, but we'll see how we progress through the rest of the UManage environment. And if there's time left over, then I'd be more than happy to do that, or we can always arrange a follow-up session to cover that part of the platform as well. I am going to move into assets here. So assets, much like rooms, when you land on this page here, it's going to show you a high-level view of the different assets in your environment. High-level understanding, are these devices online, offline, what's the power condition, alert information, etc. And then I can go into a specific asset. So when I do, much like I could see alerts at the room level, now I can look at alerts at the asset level, which on this particular device, I don't have any, so that's wonderful. And before we were looking at room level metrics, now I'm looking at asset level metrics. So instead of telling me is the room on or off or what user interface page is selected, this is going to tell me asset level information. So what's the MAC address of this device, serial number, uptime, temperature, fan speed, firmware version, connected peripherals, is it in a call or not? All of these different data points. And the more robust the API is of the device that we're integrating with, so you can see here we've got a Cisco codec, which has a very, very robust and verbose API. We can get a ton of data from it. The more robust the devices that the customers are implementing, or you as an MSP are selecting for your customers, the more data you're going to be able to provide in those environments. And another big thing for us is security. So ideally, we like to select devices that use secure protocols. You can see in the instance of the Cisco device here, this is using SSH over port 22, which is a secure protocol, as opposed to using Telnet on port 23. More and more devices in the AV environment today are supporting secure protocols like SSH, HTTPS, secure WebSockets, etc. So there are more choices for you today, both as an end customer and as an integrator, to select the appropriate devices for your environments. And just like we had a document repository at the room level, we've got a document repository at the asset level. You can now, maybe instead of storing things like bill of materials and line drawings, maybe you've got a DSP config file you want to store in here. It's entirely up to you what you want to do with that. And then again, an event log at the asset level, just like we had at the room level. Some questions that come up earlier regarding user and group provisioning. And within the platform, we went through a very significant exercise years ago, or probably a little over a year ago, where we completely redid this area. And we gave you the ability to dictate which users and groups at a very granular level, how you want them to be set up and with what rights. So within here, you can create an unlimited number of groups within our platform. And then you can see basically anywhere there's an area within our platform that you can click on, a link you can go to, a tab, a page you can go to within the environment, we can limit access or allow access in any way, shape, or form. So no access, edit access, read-only access, it's entirely up to you. Again, you can create a virtually endless number of groups and provision and assign users as you see fit. So here we're looking at an operational level group, but going back to one of the earlier questions, if I was creating a group within an MSP account, there's another field that you would see here for the operational accounts you want to limit within that group. So if you had certain technicians that were only working across certain customer accounts, you could limit their access only into those operational accounts with the rights that you provided them. So I create those different groups, add users to as many or as few groups as I see fit, and do with those as you wish. It's also within this area of the platform where we establish our different locations. You can set up locations in here. You can see, as I illustrated to you earlier on the rooms page, so this is the different locations I've set up here. And then I can customize these with other information. So when we're running Uautomate tests, for example, I probably need to know what time zone a location is in. If I'm visualizing locations on a global map tile, I need to know lat/lon information. So all of that can be edited and stored within this database here. All of the licensing information is also held within here. So your server licenses, your room licenses, all of that is here. And then finally, your server connection page state. So this is going to tell us the state of these different servers. Are they connected? What version of software they're running? When did they last connect or disconnect? This is a bit of a test environment. We're running this against our production portal, but we've got a lot of testing that we can do. You can see these are labeled as our lab servers here. So that's why you notice that the duration for these connections is a little bit more limited, because we're constantly bouncing these servers and bringing them back up and testing different workflows and scenarios. So back over here, I was on the alerts page. So natively within our platform, there's a number of intrinsic alerts. So if we fail to communicate with the device, if we can no longer talk to it, that will automatically generate an alert within the platform. But you can also set up your own rules and conditions in here. So again, just like we can build a report to illustrate data on a spreadsheet, we can build rules or conditions for virtually any metric that we're monitoring, or any metric that we're monitoring in the system, to create an error or warning condition against it. So when I build these here, and I've got an example of one, this was a test we were running this morning here. But so I've just defined the subject as being, I want to create a condition where my Cisco devices within Colorado, I can see I've limited the location there. The device kind is a VTC, and I can filter by manufacturer kind as well. And I've said the metric key or state that I want to create this condition against is the power state. And then here I've created a warning condition simply where if the codex power condition is equal to on, then I want that to trigger a warning. You have different operator conditions: equal to, not equal to, greater than equal to, less than equal to, greater than, less than, what have you. It's entirely different, up to you how you want to configure these different rules. And then once you've built those rules, you can set up notifications within the platform as well. So against those rules you've created, or the intrinsic alerts that occur within the system, who do you want those to go to? So you can limit, the number of recipients, what location, severity. all kinds of different scenarios. So if you wanted to offload this data into other third-party platforms like, ServiceNow or, Sharewell, or you name the platform of your choosing, you can do that way as another method or means to manage, ITSM, IT management and ticketing platforms. As I go over to the documents section or the resources section of our platform here, we talked earlier about the driver library, or what we call our GDL, Global Driver Library. This is the entirety of it here. Again, there's a very, very extensive list of drivers that already exist. We can build drivers for any device that has a published open API. We also have the download section here, and you can access any piece of technical documentation that we've ever produced. This has all of our deployment guides, user guides, security white papers, security FAQs, the software itself, release notes. Literally every piece of technical documentation and software is available to you within here. And when we were talking earlier about the APIs that we have available for our platform, both on the uManage and the uServer side, this is the actual REST API here for uManage with the full Swagger environment. So we've got all of our various API calls. And this is a growing list that's going to be evolving constantly. So there's all kinds of methods for you to integrate with that part of the platform. But I'm going to come over here now and do a demonstration for you guys on Automate. I will just take another quick glance to see if we've had any questions that came in before I do Automate. So there's a question, beyond exporting reports, do you have an API available to allow external visual data tool live view? So that is exactly what I talked about earlier with the data connectors. So yes, if you utilize the data connectors to feed data off into a platform of your choosing, an external visual data tool, like again, which would be like Power BI, Tableau, you could offload that data and you're going to get those updates in real time. Anytime a state change occurs within Utelogy, that is understood and stored within the database. And the moment that a change occurs within the database, it can be offloaded into the platform of your choosing through the data connectors. Expanding on that set, let's see here. Yeah, and this kind of speaking to the same point. So how often are the data points updated? The data is updated in real time when a change occurs. So the way that we track state information is last change. And you actually saw that over here. So when I was looking at the asset, specifically when I was looking at like that Cisco codec, what you'll notice is, as I go to the metrics section, you'll see there's a category or a column for last change. So when this codec, for instance, goes from a state of on to off, sleep to wake, we track that change because we don't want to constantly send data into uManage and subsequently into the database just for the sake of doing so if no change has occurred. If you've got a codec that's in an off condition, now we're constantly talking to the device to understand in real time what the state of the device is, but unless a change actually occurs, we don't articulate a change to the database or to uManage. Because if we did, we would flood your network and we would flood Azure with all of these, different data points and all of this traffic. So we only report state changes. That's the way that we do it, which is the most effective and efficient way to do that. So you can see, temperature last changed 56 minutes ago. Connection changed 7 days ago. All of these different things. Uptime, obviously now we are measuring uptime at 5-minute intervals. So this was last updated 4 minutes and 25 seconds ago. You're going to see once that change exceeds 5 minutes, you'll see the state pin or the value update for this. So here it was 27 minutes and 20 seconds. If I actually refresh this and come back to this, we would see the change will have occurred at a new interval. And there we go. It says it updated just now, and that was uptime is now 32 minutes and 22 seconds. So that's the way that we manage that. And again, if you were offloading data into another platform, it would be changed and visualized at the same time. So with that, I do want to make sure that we get through Automate before the end of the session. We talked earlier about the principal, functionality of Automate, which is to provide automated room readiness testing. In this scenario here, I've got a number of different what we call scripts set up. And when you build a script, there's actually no scripting that occurs. It's just terminology that we're using. But so when you build a script, you define it, you give it a title and a description. I get pretty verbose with my descriptions to say exactly what I want to do. And then we actually have what we call blocks or predefined blocks within the system that do different things. So we have blocks to turn the system on and off. We have blocks to look at device health, restart devices, check the state of devices, call macros within the system, do any number of various activities. And in this particular instance here, what I've done is I've created a script where I'm going to turn the room on. I've got a bit of a delay in there just to make sure I give my devices the appropriate amount of time to come up. I'm going to check all the health of the devices in the room. So is everything online? Is it on the network? Is it healthy? I'm also checking the state of my display, one, to see that the power condition is true, that it turned on, and secondarily that it turned on and it actually came on in the right input. So here I'm checking power state and input state. I'm also starting a test in this room. I've got a Biamp Tessera DSP, which I've got a tone generator on and a audio meter feature. So I'm starting an audio test in that room to make sure the tone generator is running. I am conducting a video call on my Cisco SX20 endpoint, and I've defined within, as a part of this test, what number I'm going to dial. If the call fails, how many times I'm going to retry, how long I'm going to wait for it to time out, and if it does connect successfully, how long I want the test to run for, and the minimum TX and RX rates I want to see when the call successfully connects. So after I've defined all that, I'm going to check my audio meter, make sure I'm getting the right levels back. I'm going to end the audio test, do a delay, and turn the system off. And down here, what I've defined is a concurrency value. So Utelogy can test as many rooms concurrently at the same time as you'd like. But typically, if you're doing something like a video call or an audio call, you're going to be dialing into some type of bridging platform, something of that nature that's probably going to have an upper limit to the number of calls that it supports. So you can set that concurrency rate. So if you had a bridge that only supported 50 calls, I would want to set this to a concurrency rate of 50. It would test 50 rooms in one block. So if I had 200 rooms I was testing and each test took a minute to get through, I would test 50 rooms in the first minute. Once those are done, I'd move in subsequently to the next 50. So it would take me a total of 4 minutes to get through those 200 rooms in chunks of 50. So again, I can set that rate to whatever works for me. Once I have built the script that says what I want my test to do, I go ahead and schedule it. This is just like you're scheduling anything in your Outlook or Google Calendar. So I choose from a drop-down list the script that I've already created, which one I want to run. I choose what rooms, location, or locations I want this to run against. I could literally just click on the Utelogy lab and it would choose every single room in my environment, but I have different rooms with different capabilities. So in this scenario here, I've just selected a particular room that I want to run this one script against. I can choose the start date, the start time, any repetition. I'm actually running this test every morning at 5:30 a.m. And then you can see here time zone. Time zone is very important because if you're a global entity and you want to run the same test against rooms in different locations at 1 o'clock in the morning for that specific location, obviously 1 a.m. in Dublin is very different than 1 a.m. in LA. So in that scenario, location information or time zone information is very important to make sure that my tests are occurring at the appropriate time for those rooms that are being tested as a part of that plan. So we have multiple ways to deal with time in Utelogy. We can define time within the location. We can actually look to the local time of the server that those rooms are running on. We have a myriad of different ways to handle that. Because it's such an important element of our solution, we gave a lot of thought and consideration to that area of the platform. And then once the script is scheduled to run and it's done so, I'll get an output of that every day. So you can see here, actually, I've got my test that ran this morning on 11/18. I've got the test that ran previously yesterday on 11/17. And as I drill into a particular report, so if I look actually at the boardroom test here, we can see we first turned the system on and that completed successfully. We did a little bit of a delay. But when I come down to my device health, I can see that actually my display and my power conditioner are offline. For some reason, I'm not sure what's going on there. I'll most likely have to dispatch somebody to the room. Maybe the display got disconnected from the network as well as the PDU, or maybe actually the PDU triggered some type of event. Who knows? But I have very detailed information to know specifically what devices are offline. I can see that also the display did not power on, obviously as a result of the fact that we probably weren't able to power it on. Then we did a macro to start our audio test. We dialed a video call on our Cisco codec. Call quality measurements met or exceeded what we were looking for. On the Biamp DSP, we were looking for a value of 50%. We wanted to see that the value coming back was greater than or equal to 50% of what we had defined as the level in the room. Actually came back as 66%, so that passed the test. We ended the audio test, did a bit of a delay, and turned it off. So we see, again, at a very granular, deep level, what occurred specifically in this room, so we can much more effectively and easily, troubleshoot any issues and bring resolution to that. So the report will always tell us how many rooms were processed, how many rooms passed, how many rooms failed, and any critical errors that we had or warnings. And this room, again, was just a single test, but even if I had 50 rooms in this, I'd see the output of all 50 rooms that were a part of that test, or I could choose to filter that and show only failed rooms. I can export this data. There's a number of ways that I can work with it. That being said, I know we are 3 minutes from the top of the hour here. I wanted to allow time for additional questions and comments if there were any. Maybe open the floor up, or if Techni-Contact had any additional agenda items for today's meeting to allow us to get through those. So, okay, so it doesn't look like we have any questions at this time beyond what we've already answered there. Let me just go back and make sure I did get to everything.
I'm not sure if Ben had anything that he wished to add. Ben, have you got anything that you wanted to add?
At this stage, I don't. Right now, I don't have anything to add for this, but anyone that is interested, I'd be more than happy to follow up and we can go into more detail on the specifics of the way that things operate. But yeah, other than that, I don't have anything to add at the moment.
I mean, I can use 1 minute here to cover some of the questions that had come up earlier. So I'm also connected into this is a system back in our lab in Costa Mesa, California, that's operating as a userver instance here. Because userver is just a Windows service, you've officially seen userver now. Ta-da! There it is. There's not much to see for userver. All of the configuration is done within this tool that I mentioned earlier called uConsole. So this is just a application that you can launch here. So I just launch uConsole. And then within uConsole, this is where I do all my room configuration. So you guys had asked earlier about like cloning a room, for instance. So once I have built the initial configuration for a room, literally all I need to do is right click on it. I hit clone. I can call the room whatever I want to, name it, click OK. It's going to create an exact replica. Again, all I probably have to do is come in here, change the IP addresses of those devices, hit file save. And now in under 30 seconds or a minute, I've got an entirely new room that's up and online and operational. When you add devices into the platform, you just add those in. You can click add device. It'll search the local library of drivers that you have installed here. You can actually see that we also do have the facilities and ability to integrate with AMX and Crestron, even though those are proprietary solutions with no published APIs. We wrote a suite of modules to integrate with those devices. So we do have that as well. But I can simply add devices, or I can go to the driver library, post it up on GDL, search for a device. It'll pull in all the supported devices there. And then I just go in. Most devices are going to be pretty straightforward to add. You're going to typically give it a friendly name or a reference name, define the IP address, maybe a username and password to log into it like you'd have on the Cisco codec. And that's going to be about it. Once you hit file save, we're going to automatically start communicating with that device, and you're going to be good to go. And then it's within the tech tool here that you can see the real live output and feedback. So all that state information that I was talking to you earlier, I'm in the wrong room there. It's my duplicate that's not online. But you can see all that same information you saw up in uManage. So it's fan speed, it's firmware version, MAC address, serial number, power, temperature. All that same information is illustrated to you here. And every one of these commands that you see, these are the actual commands that are supported by the driver. And drivers are broken down into features. So I have different commands that are supported for different features of the device to deliver different pieces of control. And to answer, I think the last question that we had, this is where it's within the pages section of uConsole where you build out the user interface. Again, Utelogy has stock or default themes that drive the look and feel of what the user interface looks like. So we've got, one theme that's called Cobalt that kind of has a Zoom look and feel to it. We've got Obsidian, which kind of has a Microsoft look and feel to it. Different fonts, square buttons versus round buttons, different background colors, header colors. But all of this is just, again, based in HTML5 and CSS. So you can create your own custom themes. You can take existing themes that we have and modify the CSS or the cascading style sheet, just modify variables within there to change small elements of it. To meet your needs, or you can, again, build new ones from the ground up. But it's all done through configuration, through a WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get type of configurator. We've got a set of what we call components that do different things. So we've got volume control components and camera components that manage the PTZ functions. We've got routing components and page flipper components. There's all these different predefined elements. So you don't have to know simple Windows or simple Sharp or C Sharp or any programming languages to deploy Utelogy. You just have to have an understanding of how AV works and have a bit of training on how Utelogy operates, but that's it. You don't need to do any actual coding. It's all done through configuration.